This week's Parsha of Kisavo begins with a description of Bikurim, the mitzvah of Bikurim, Hava'as Bikurim, the bringing of the first fruits. The Parsha's name, or at least popularly Kisavo, when you arrive at the land. There is one of the mitzvos hataluyos ba'aretz, one of the mitzvos that depend on being in Eretz Yisrael, is bringing Bikurim. What are Bikurim? First fruits. What happens? Farmer goes to his field, he examines, and when the first fruits begin to appear, in their very early stages, he ties a gemi, ties some kind of ribbon around them. It's one of the, it applies to the Shiva Saminim, to the 7 species that are, that the land of Israel is blessed with. And when they ripen, he puts them in a basket and he brings them to the Beis HaMikdash and he presents them to the Kohen. And now we start with our problematic verse, which is Perek Chaf Vav, Pasuk Gimel, 26:3. Uvasa el HaKohen asher yeh bayamim hahem. And you come to the Kohen. I'm just going to note the problematic phrase here. Asher yeh bayamim hahem, who will be in those days. And the Chazal say, well, what other Kohen are you going to go to? You can't possibly go to a Kohen who won't be in those days. We're going to bookmark that, and you can think about it. V'amar Torah love, and you will say to him, Higadeti hayom, I have declared today LaHashem Elokecha, to the Lord your God, Kivosi ela artz asher nishba Hashem lavosenu lasis lanu, that I have come to the land that God has promised to our fathers to give to us. When did he come to the land? Well, if he arrived with the Bnei Yisrael who came out of the desert into the land of Israel, and he waited for the 14 years, the 7 of Kibush and the 7 of Nachalah, the 7 of conquest and the 7 of allocation of various parcels among the tribes, well, then that's when he came. Well, how about his children and his children's children and subsequent generations, many of whom, all of whom, were born in Israel, and none of whom arrived in Israel. None of them came to Israel. So what does it mean? Basi el haaretz, ki basi el haaretz, I have arrived in the land. So Rav Schwab addresses this, and he says that when you understand what haaretz, the land, is, it becomes clear. What does he view as the land? Well, the land can be read broadly as the land of Israel, but can also be read narrowly as the Beis HaMikdash, as the temple itself. Why would you read it that way? Well, he says the Kedusha, the sanctity, and as a result, the specialness of the land of Israel devolves from the Kedusha, the sanctity of the Mikdash and of Yerushalayim. So what he's saying is, I've come to the Beis HaMikdash. And he's tying in his declaration, his land with the land that was promised to our forefathers. It surely does include all of the land of Eretz Yisrael, and that's why the Bikurim are being brought. That's why he's bringing the Bikurim. But the place from which the Kedusha spreads is, in other words, the core element of the land is the Beis HaMikdash. So when he says, Ki basi el haaretz, it's a play on the first use of that word of bia, of coming, which is ubasa el hakohen asher yeh bayamim. You will come to the priest who will be in those days, and you say, Ki basi el haaretz, I've arrived, I'm here. Just parenthetically, this language of Higadeti hayom, I have declared today, where does he declare it? Where did he already declare it? So the Malbim and the Netziv says something very similar, that he doesn't make a verbal declaration. He makes a declaration, a Haggadah, by his actions, that by coming to the Kohen with the fruits in a basket, and usually it's accompanied, the Mishnah in Bikurim talks about it, it's accompanied by quite a bit of fanfare. That's a powerful declaration. Okay, that's Rav Schwab explaining Kibasi as deriving from the Beis Hamikdash. But now there's something a little eyebrow raising, which is that there is yet another. This is the essential Mikra Bikurim, comes after you give it to the Kohen. The Kohen takes the basket from your hands, and he places it at the side of the Beis Hamikdash, and then you declare as follows: Arami Oved Avi. My father was a wandering Aramean, or a Syrian was trying to destroy my father, one or the other. Vayered Mitzrayim, and he, meaning my father, went down to Egypt. Vayergo Shambam Seimaat, and he lived there few in number, and he became great. Vayisham L'goy Gadol Etzum V'rov. These are words that are familiar to us because they form the backbone of the Haggadah. And then it goes on to say, Vayareo asara mitzrim vayanunu, and the Egyptians afflicted us. They dealt bad with us. They dealt with us badly. Vayignu aleinu avodah kasha, and they gave us very hard work. And we cried out to God. Vanitzak, vayishma Hashem eskolenu. God heard our voices, etc., etc., and God brought us out of Egypt. What in the world what's Egypt got to do with this? Why are we dragging the Egyptian experience into this mitzvah? Why don't we drag it into all the mitzvahs? I mean, we have some mitzvahs, like Kriyas Shema and like Tzitzis, where there's an explicit connection with Yetzias Mitzrayim. But all of a sudden, Bikurim, and we're talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim? What gives? Why not other mitzvahs? Why not about Meiser? Why not about Leket Shiklar Peah? Why is Egypt? What does Egypt have to do with Mikra Bikur? So we could say that the farmer who works the land and enjoys the fruits of his labor stands in stark contrast, B'chaste Hashem, with the kindness of God. He's able to enjoy the fruits of his labor, as opposed to the experience in Egypt, where we worked very hard and enjoyed none of the fruits of our labor. And it's quite possible that the work that we did was actually fruitless. There was no point to it. It was the only reason we were put to work, or at least the principal reason we were put to work, was so that the Egyptians could oppress us. It wasn't for productivity, and if it was for productivity, it wasn't for productivity that we could enjoy. To put it in a phrase from a different time, we were alienated from our labor. And now, in contrast, says the Mevi Bikurim, the farmer, says, now I get to enjoy the fruits. Now this is, look at what I've done. Now, of course, there is a risk of falling into the trap of kochi va'otzem yadi also liyasachai lezeh. That it is my power and my cleverness and my work that created all of this, and we attempt to defeat that attitude or redirect that attitude by saying, you've got to bring the first of your fruits, of which presumably the farmer is most proud and excited, and you have to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, and you have to acknowledge HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What are you acknowledging? What you're acknowledging is that You're no longer, we as a people and I as an individual am no longer alienated from our labor, but because of the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the kindness of the Almighty, we get to work and we get to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Every time that happens, I suggest, we are arriving anew in Eretz Yisrael. Enjoying the fruits of our labor is a new arrival. Each time, it's a new arrival in Eretz Yisrael. It's a chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we can do that. Now, of course, that's mainly in Eretz Yisrael. And that's where it all comes together. But even, I believe, even when we're in Golus, if we have the opportunity to work, and we have the opportunity to see the fruits of our labor, whether it's a business, or it's a profession, or it's any other way in which we exert ourselves and we see something from it, even if by the time we're done spending what we've made, we're left with zero in our accounts at the end of the month because of high expenses, because of tuitions, because of all manner of expense. At the end of the day, the end of the month, it's our labor, which through the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu has brought about something, results that I can enjoy. That is a tremendous chesed, and the lesson of Bikurim is we owe a debt of gratitude to the Almighty for our ability to work, to produce, and to enjoy what we produce. Have a good Shabbos.